Hello and welcome. Before we get started, a few bits of housekeeping. Cameras will be turned off, basically, until the Q&A afterwards. If you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand or post it in the chat. Now, Robyn will introduce me, but I have the pleasure of introducing Robyn. And forgive me because I will have the intro in front of me and I'll come right back to Zoom, so I will see you shortly. Robynne Pendariès received her degree in child psychology from Tufts University in Boston and then moved to Paris in 1989. She worked for 10 years as a fashion buyer in Paris, and subsequently decided to start her business in 2006 as the first English-speaking professional organizer in France. Robyn worked with clients of all ages, from 3 to 90 years old, in several European countries and in the United States, in person and online, as well as adults with both neurotypical and neurodivergent brains. A strong interest in adults with neurodivergent brains led Robyn to the next chapter of her professional career as an ADHD coach for adults. Robyn is an active member of Message Support Group, AAWE, Association for American Women in Europe, FAWCO, FOCO, Federation of American Women's Clubs Overseas, and Cancer Support France, Paris IDF.
Thank you, Gayle. That nice introduction. It's my turn. I'm going to introduce Gayle now. Gayle is the Chief Executive Organizer of the company Let's Get Organized, LLC, which is based in Northern New Jersey in the United States. Gayle is a certified professional organizer in chronic disorganization. She is a certified virtual organizing professional and also an organizing coach. Gayle is the author of the book that we're going to talk about this evening called Get the Big O Organized: 7 Steps to Achieving Calm, Clarity, and Control in Your Space, Mind, and Life. The Let's Get Organized interactive digital workbook and the Let's Get Organized series of mini ebooks. In her free time, Gayle loves attending synagogue, chilling out with a good novel, swing dancing, and spending time with her 20-something son and daughter. Gayle and I met a couple of years ago through a networking group of entrepreneurs. Some of our members are also on the Zoom tonight. Thank you for your support. And Gayle and I just clicked right away. We liked each other immediately. And we just totally coincidentally were both trained at a program called Coach Approach, which is for professional organizers who want to become ADHD coaches or who are thinking about becoming ADHD coaches. In any case, I was so drawn to the title of Gayle's book, The Big O, which we all know what that's about. And I thought I have to buy this and see what another professional organizer has to say, kind of getting into her mind. And after I read it, I knew that I wanted to share it with other people, which is why I initiated this Zoom and wanted to organize it with Gayle. So honestly, if you cannot afford to work with a professional organizer, this is a fantastic plan B. There are lots of great ideas and worksheets and cool visuals and further resources that we'll talk about as we go. A little bit, not too much, but the reason why Gayle and I wanted to make this Zoom is because this is a little bit of an intersection between ADHD or neurodivergent brains and organizing as well too. So just to specify, Gayle is an organizer at the present time, and I previously was a professional organizer and now an ADHD coach. So we thought we'd kind of bring those two things together to one. So speaking of that, my first question, I want to show everybody. So this is the book, which you might have seen in the ad, and you can see, I don't know if you can see here well, that I did my homework. And there were more Post-it notes. I got rid of some of them as Gayle and I were talking, in order to not make this Zoom too long, but there's just so much in here. It's very, very meaty. The first thing that struck me, Gayle, about this book was there's a part of it in the introduction that says how to read this book. And it says, if you do choose to share this process with someone, you may want to find an accountability partner. And this is the first thing that jumped out at me, because as an ADHD coach, we talk about, things to boost dopamine, we talk about things to boost motivation, and we talk about doing things with other people and getting the social connections and body doubling and just any kind of activity that a person with ADHD can do with somebody else is always to their benefit, or almost always, I should say, to their benefit. So I wanted to know how this idea of accountability partner, almost like a two-person book club, is that what you were trying to say?
Oh, I love that. Well, basically, my intention was if you want to tackle your organizing project and you follow through the book on an organizing project, if you want to share your thoughts and your ideas and your accountability with another person, then
Mm.
as you had said, body doubling, finding someone you trust, someone who can hold a space, someone who can be a witness, a mirror, and an anchor to the process can be really, really helpful. As you know, in coaching, having that support is, in my mind, it's essential. And I always say ongoing support is the key to success.
So you weren't suggesting that somebody should read the book at the same time and do the worksheets at the same time, kind of side by side. You were saying actually working together in the same space or working in two different spaces or both.
Well, depending on what the reader or I'll even say client prefers, I had not thought about actually someone reading the book at the same time, like two people reading a book at the same time to support one another. I was looking at it from the perspective of like the little worksheets at the end, like, okay, these are my internal ideas and my thoughts, and they could be very, very personal, or they could be shared with someone to say, hey, I'm
Mm.
embarking on this journey, and these are my thoughts, come along for the ride, and I'm gonna bounce my ideas off you. What do you think?
That's great. Thanks for that explanation. So let's just dive right in. I mean, there are a few things here that are very, very that seem very important, and I just want to touch on it, without getting too deep into it. But it's this idea, the seven C's. So what I loved about your book is that you've got these little acronyms and slogans and yeah, I think it's just so creative. I mean, I'm sure this is a great creative outlet for you, besides the hands-on organizing. So can you tell us a little bit about the seven C's?
The seven C's are seven steps to getting organized, to clearing clutter, to making space for oh my gosh, space, time, and stuff in your life. Um, Sorry, I'm having a senior moment. Anyway,
That's
so
okay.
it's essentially the codifying of the process that we use in the field. And I wanted to have an easy way to remember what the steps are. So essentially, they are: we consult what's going on in your life, consider what are your challenges and your strengths. Then we get into, we get consult, consider, clear. We start with a nice new space. Then we categorize. What do we have here? What are the like with like? What are the similarities? Then we, oh gosh, okay.
Contain, contain,
We contain,
contain.
yes, that's step five.
Okay.
I'm just making sure I don't forget any.
Okay.
Contain, put everything into a way that is easy to maintain, which is step six, which is control. And then coach, step seven, kind of floats around throughout all of the other steps. Um, because as we organize and we touch our stuff, there's so much that bubbles up along the way that
Mm.
it's really essential to process the emotions and the feelings and the thoughts and the voices in our heads that may not be our own, that come up with the whole process.
Well, that brings up something great. I mean, because we both went through this coaching program together, and the people who went through the coaching program, some of them became ADHD coaches like myself. Some of them did not. There were lots of different things that people actually did with the training that they received. And so I know that you are still working as a professional organizer, but I would like to know how you bring coaching to your business and how you kind of weave it through the professional organizing.
I'm glad you said that because I'm a little bit of a maverick from the coach approach program. Um, they don't always like, well, didn't always like what I said I would do, because I do like to weave it in through the
Mm,
organizing process. Um, it's sometimes good for the client if we stop the hands-on
mm,
work for a few moments. And I like to listen to what the client has to say. And sometimes there are clarifying questions and a little bit of probing, like literally asking what bubbled up for you. What are you feeling? I see your face has changed, your voice has changed, your mannerisms have changed. Let's stop for a moment and address what's really going on, and let's kind of delve deeper into the cause of what's coming up. So I pepper it through as opposed to trying to make it a unique service.
right. And I did notice that in the book as well too. I mean, there are things that, there's like there's a section about values and needs, which is something that we learned also too about through our coaching program. And so this book is not just about what kinds of boxes to buy at the Container Store or wherever you can buy them in France, IKEA. It's so much more than that, I think. And that was what really spoke to me in any case. So besides the seven C's, something else that I liked also too was the D.E.A.R acronym, D.E.A.R. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. This came to me once when I was talking about time management. DEAR stands for delegate, eliminate, automate, reevaluate. Because
Mm.
people will say, I know what I have to do, I just don't have the time to do it. So I try to reframe that and say, yes, you do. So all we have is time. We just choose how we spend it.
True. This is true.
So to free up time, and I will at the very end of this for in a minute, I will talk about a book I recently read that is really helpful about time. So essentially, for delegate, what can you give to somebody else that you don't have to do yourself? Because each of us has a zone of genius. And I may be good at something, and Robin, you're good at something, and Robert and Karen and Emmeline, I love that. Allison, Maggie, you're good at other things. So, what are your strengths that you can really excel at that would take something off the plate of somebody else? Eliminate what doesn't have to be done at all. Automate what can be put on autopilot. Like many of us are probably doing automatic bill pay and things like that, or grocery delivery or whatever that really, really is a huge time saver. And then reevaluate because needs change over time, and we grow and we change and we adapt and we evolve, and technology changes and resources change. So, periodically we have to look at what we're doing and think like, oh gosh, revisit, delegate, eliminate, automate. What else is going on in my life? Um,
That's
yeah,
really helpful. I mean, that's part of the thing that we talk about in coaching as well too. Especially when the subject of to-do lists comes up, which is a big subject in ADHD coaching. What can how can you streamline? How can you make this easier for yourself? How can you work with your brain? How can you delegate it to somebody else? Just all these questions of how can you use your own strengths and your own resources, but also the resources outside of you. How can you make that work, for you? So that's really helpful.
and
Um,
if I may share,
yes,
I
please
have
share.
recently, I think I'm on my third listen. This book is a life changer.
So is that an audio book and there's a workbook with it?
Yes, I'm listening to it as an audiobook. I'm sure it's a hard copy. The author's name is Dan Martell. I get nothing for telling you about this book other than it is an amazing resource. And it's all about mindset shift. And
Mm.
it goes with Dear, like, what can you get off your plate? So if you have a little bit of a budget or no budget at all, and you find somebody who's like willing to do something that you hate, like, it's great.
So it's almost like bartering, is that what you're saying?
Well, in
Or
listening
you
to the book,
exchange tasks?
Jenny, thank you. Yeah, he talks about, he reads his own book, and he talks about, I guess, another company or another business owner who needed a particular service. And they looked around, they did a little chat GPT, or they looked on Google or whatever, and they found a group of people who did the exact same thing that they wanted to have done, and they don't even
Mm,
charge for it.
mm,
So, bonus.
wow, that's excellent. I
Yeah,
love that idea. Thank you.
sure.
So I just wanted to come back a second, since this is where my center of interest is about neurodiverse clients. And so, in the beginning, when I was a professional organizer, I had no idea about ADHD at that point. But I just knew that there was a set of people who related differently to their stuff, to their time management, to their paperwork, to their motions, all of that afterwards became clear to me, when I started to learn about ADHD, but I did not know at the time. And I want to read this quote from your book because I just find that it's very, very telling. So again, this is highlighting the fact that you in this book do address neurodiversity. So it's not just organizing for the neurotypicals, it's also organizing for people who think differently, right? So
That's
you said, I love working with neurodiverse clients. It's all very well and good to do an organizing project where all the client wants is a pretty space that looks like it jumped out of a Netflix show.
right.
What are the names of those two girls that everything's color coded?
Oh, is it the home edit? Oh, I
Yes, the
suppose.
home edit.
Oh, there we are.
Exactly.
Yes.
However, it is not nearly as satisfying as getting down into the nitty-gritty of what makes a person tick, learning how they think, delving into what's important to them, and then coming up with creative ways to organize their lives. To me, that's the best and most fun part of being a professional organizer. And here's like the intersection between the neurodivergence and the organizing. I'm wondering how you came into that, how you came to realize about ADHD. Was it through your organizing or did it come in the other direction?
Yes. The more I started working with clients, the more I saw that I'm being called to work with people who are, I'm going to call real. Just as it says in the book, like, yeah, it's lovely to have a beautiful space. However, the beautiful space can go up in smoke. It's the person who is the most important. As I started out working with clients, the first thing I noticed was that they were mainly women of a certain age who were disorganized because of menopause.
Mm,
And as I grew and I decided, all right, where am I going to get my certifications? It was either going to be NAPO, which at the time was National Association of Professional Organizers, or was it going to be at the time NSGCD, National Study Group on Chronic Disorganization, which is now the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. And I chose the ICD because it was so much deeper. It was more
mm,
granular. It was more brain based. And the ICD education is all about like the neuroplasticity and what are the habits and why are the habits and neurons that fire together and all of this whole the psychology and the neurology. And I thought, oh, this is good stuff.
good
So
stuff.
I got deeper into that.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. There was something in this book, and this is a great page there with great visuals that I'm looking at. And I had never heard of this before. It's a chapter talking about space challenges when you live in small spaces, and a lot of my Parisian friends will be able to relate to this, especially those who have come from maybe America or someplace else where they were living in a bigger space and then coming to Paris where it was definitely more challenging and smaller. And so you talk about Parkinson's law, and I had never heard of that before. It jumped out of the page. And so I wanted you to share that with everybody.
Certainly. So to paraphrase, it basically means that things expand to fit the space available. And I also like to think that things can shrink to fit the space available.
Agreed.
I mean, I could go on and on about a particular client with a 7-bedroom house who just kept buying clothing until the clothing took over the house.
What do you think that's about?
Oh, there's a whole lot of
What's
mental stuff
behind
going
that?
on there. Lots and lots. Yeah, well,
It is interesting. And when I got into the professional organizing business, I didn't realize just how deep it was. And I didn't realize how people's stuff and their space reflected actually what was going on in their brains and in their bodies as well too. Sometimes we talk about body clutter as well too,
Definitely.
so that's always been something that's fascinated me. And then, transitioning from professional organizing to an ADHD coach was just similar to what you were saying, was this whole other layer of going deeper, what's underneath it or what's behind the clutter, or the disorganization. So that's why one of the reasons why I was fascinated about your book. And speaking of that, there were a lot of things when I was reading the book that of course I could relate to. Again, a lot of the intersection between these ideas of neurodiversity and ADHD and professional organizing. And I love this line. It says, you say, that's what I'm here for, to be the bridge or life raft that gets you from where you are now to where you want to be. Can you just explain what that means? What's behind
Sure.
that?
My thought is my experience, many clients, they have a project in mind or whatever it is, a task or a sequence of events that have to happen, and they can go from, say, step 1 to 4, but without some kind of bridge or raft, there is nothing getting them from step 4 to step 5, which is the completion
Mm,
of the task.
mm.
And I think that's where you as a coach and I as an organizer come in to be that support system that gets them to the finish line.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, of course, that's task completion is an executive function. I also find that with my clients, they have trouble initiating tasks in the beginning. So when I would organize with them in the past, not with them, but with other people, when I was working with people as a professional organizer, there were lots of little projects and tasks that had not been finished, but there were also lots of things that had never been started as well too,
Yes,
right?
you're absolutely right.
Whether it be piles or projects or whatever it was. And so, I didn't see it at first, but then afterwards, the more you dive into the neurodiversity, you see that organizing your space and your time, but especially your space, is so connected to all of these executive functions as
Huge.
well too.
And
Yeah.
there's a graphic which I found as I was doing some research for the book on executive function. I thought that was a perfect graphic. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
could.
again, that's also an example. Like if you pick up other organizing books, they are meant for or meant to be sold to the average person in the population or the most amount of people in the population. Which, if you say that 95% of the population is neurotypical or is not neurodivergent or, doesn't have an ADHD brain, so what does that mean? Who are those organizing books being sold to, or who are they speaking to, I guess. And so what I thought was interesting about this book is that, yeah, like you speak to this other population. There's not many books like that out there. And the other ones that I've seen certainly don't have at the end of every chapter this kind of, these kinds of worksheets and the 10 commandments of organizing. I don't know. It's just so
That is
cool.
exclusively mine. Yes. And number one,
So
thou shalt not beat thyself.
yeah. Yeah. No, and also what I wanted to say, and this is how I show up as an ADHD coach, and this is something that we share in common, is that we have to be non-judgmental. Because if we are judgmental, we cannot do our job well, whether it be as a coach or as an organizer. And that I feel like that comes through loud and clear in your book
Thank
as
you.
well too. It's just very supportive and non-judgmental, just like how you show up.
And as a coach, you
Um,
meet people where they are.
that's true.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, meet you where they're at. That's a very good example. So I have one last question, but it's a doozy. Okay.
Okay.
So one of the things that I noticed when I was working with people in their homes is that there were many things that got in the way of organizing. And one of the big ones that got in the way of them getting organized and getting help from a professional organizer was this idea of shame or embarrassment.
Oh, yes.
And I just was wondering if you could speak to that. Like, how does shame and embarrassment get in the way of being organized?
I think it kind of even just begins at the door. um,
Hmm.
Probably even before the door, because there's a lot of shame and embarrassment that prevents people from picking up the phone or doing a search or sending an email saying, I acknowledge that I need help. I'm ready to feel vulnerable again. And I trust that this person I'm reaching out to is not going to shame me, which I think is a tremendous leap of faith. A coach, an organizer, it's like, oh, wow. When someone says, I'm reaching out and I'm scared, it's like, wow, thank you. Honestly, it just happened this morning. Someone found me from the ICD, and I'm like, first, I'm really honored and I'm flattered that you felt comfortable enough to reach out because like it's bearing your soul when you're reaching out to a coach or an organizer to think like, oh my gosh, what is this person going to think of me? And I'm sure you hear the same words.
I mean, I heard it more as an organizer, probably, than I do now. Um, but yes, I heard that for a very long time. And actually, it's funny, it just reminded me of how people would not invite me over to their house because they would say, I'm embarrassed as a friend, on a social level, not even, as a professional organizer. And so, and that made me feel bad because then I thought, well, maybe they think that I'm judging them, you know,
Right.
and I'm not that kind of person. So that bothered me. It's kind of like if you're a cook, people don't want to have you over for dinner.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I don't know. That's just what came to mind. In any case, is there something else that you feel that you want to share about the book before we open up for questions?
Oh, I'm sure that the questions will lead to really good sharing. So let's have
That's
at it.